Good afternoon and welcome to the much anticipated webinar on understanding Ohio workers' compensation and the drug-free safety program. This is Victoria Beal with the Ohio LTAP Center, and we are so pleased to partner with our colleagues in the Opportunity, Diversity, and Inclusion Division, and specifically Lisa Washington, who works in that section, who has helped to organize this webinar for you today. A couple of quick housekeeping items, and then I'll turn it over to your presenters. First off, I'd like for everyone to look in the GoToWebinar panel and please find the questions box. We would like to have you please go ahead and put a hi or hello in there so we know that you have found that area and are able to send us questions throughout the webinar through the question box if you have them. The other thing I want to mention, and this is a little different than our normal webinars, the presenters actually would like to offer you the opportunity to raise your hand if you have a question, and then I can unmute you and you can unmute yourself and you'll be able to ask the audio question as well. So if you want to look on the GoToWebinar panel, there is an option to raise your hand, and you would just click in front of your name to raise your hand, and then I will look for those who do have their hands raised, and I'll let you know before I unmute you, so that way you can ask an audio question of the presenters. Last but not least, there is a handout section in your GoToWebinar panel, and this is the same item that was emailed out earlier today. So if you just registered the last couple of hours, you probably don't have it, and you can download it from the handout section of the GoToWebinar panel. I will be sending it out though as well in a follow-up email to everyone with hopefully a link to the recording as long as technology cooperates. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn things over to Lisa Washington. Lisa, you ready?
Yes. Good afternoon. And again, I want to thank you for joining us this afternoon. This webinar is being hosted by ODOT's Division of Opportunity, Diversity, and Inclusion, the Office of Outreach. The Outreach Office normally holds in-person trainings, events, and face-to-face meetings. Our office strives to assist and educate businesses regarding opportunities with ODOT. In light of COVID-19, our office is working to revise our outreach efforts and put them to virtual sessions. So be on the lookout for an email this week, actually, announcing our next training on July 30th. We've partnered with OSHA to present an OSHA updates session. And this event will be held via Microsoft Teams. Today's session is relevant for ODOT construction contractors and subcontractors, as it's a requirement that you be enrolled in BWC's drug-free safety program or a comparable program approved by BWC. The handout that you received earlier is a page from ODOT's construction and material specifications booklet that highlights the drug-free safety program requirement. So we want to make sure that if you do not have this program, that you understand it and that you get enrolled. At this time, I am honored to introduce today's presenter, Ms. Melony Bryant of the Ohio Bureau of Workers' Compensation. Ms. Bryant serves as the Minority and Small Business Advocate, assisting minority and small businesses to navigate through BWC's system. BWC and Melony are committed to assist this vast group of employers to grow and strive in Ohio's economy, acknowledging the fact that these employers have very limited resources. As a note, Melony covers the complete state of Ohio. I, along with other colleagues, have seen her all over the state at many sessions. That's when we were having in-person sessions presenting BWC programs. Ms. Bryant joined BWC in 2014 and has more than 20 years of workers' compensation experience. She is a graduate of The Ohio State University. At this time, we welcome Melony.
Thank you. It's such a nice presentation. I really enjoyed that. So Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Melony Bryant. I am the Minority and Small Business Advocate with the Ohio Bureau of Workers' Compensation. And today I was asked to discuss our drug-free safety program, but I also just wanted to give you a baseline information of our agency as well. In my 20 years of working in the industry, I understand that a lot of small businesses don't know what they don't know about workers' compensation. So I initially want to just give you some understanding of our agency, and then we'll get into talking about the drug-free safety program. One of the things that I love before COVID and I was out in the field and giving presentations, I welcome people to ask questions anytime they have a question. You don't need to wait until you have a question. Feel free to interrupt, raise your hand, and then we will answer your question as they come. So thank you guys and welcome. Okay, so the Ohio Bureau of Workers' Compensation, who are we? So we were created in 1913, and we are one of 4 monopolistic states. And a lot of people get confused about what monopolistic means. In these 4 states, you either have workers' compensation coverage with us, or you do not have workers' compensation coverage. And basically what that means is Aflac, Progressive, Anthem cannot provide workers' compensation insurance to you. You must come through our agency. So I get a lot of calls from individuals in which they've been injured while they're working, and they tried to file it under their private health insurance, and the claim has been denied by their private health insurance, and they've been directed to send it to us. So it's really important for individuals, for employers, to make sure that you're qualifying yourself appropriately and that you have workers' compensation coverage if need be. And we'll talk a little bit about who needs to be covered and who must be covered by law. But in Ohio, North Dakota, Washington, Wyoming, if you say these 2 words, hurt and work, it must come through our agencies. And most people don't know that. And I know all of my small businesses doing this over 20 years, workers' compensation isn't something that you can focus on because you're wearing 20 different hats. But that's the reason why I'm on this call right now, is to make sure you guys know what you don't know and that you have a resource in case you do have questions. Questions about that at all?
There's none in the question box right now, but we're happy to take questions in the question box, or you can raise your hand and I will unmute you and you can ask your question directly of the presenter. Thanks.
Okay. If there's a question that comes in, you can interrupt me. So what is workers' compensation insurance? I always tell people it's a lot like most insurances. So you pay premiums, and businesses pay premiums to us. And then in return, we pay for the coverage of that claim. We pay the indemnity, and indemnity basically means anytime you're missing work because you're not able to work, we pay a percentage of the cost of your payroll. And then of course we pay medical as well. So that would include doctor visits, prescriptions, co-pays. When you have workers' compensation insurance, your employees in return don't have to pay any of that. And it's a no fault system. So it's one of the hard things for employers, because we do get employers who say, well, this person was not doing what I told them to do, and so therefore we want to deny their claim. It's basically like a parent-child relationship, in the sense of, if you hire an individual and they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing and they get injured, unfortunately, it is your fault that they were not following by the rules. And so what I tell a lot of individuals who say, what am I supposed to do with this person who didn't wear their safety goggles? And my initial question is, what did you do when they didn't wear their safety goggles? Well, I told them about it. Okay, the next time he didn't wear his safety goggles, what did you do? I told him again, you need to file and follow through the processes of making sure you escalate getting rid of that individual, because ultimately that will be your claim. So someone failing to wear their safety goggles and having an incident and an accident, that claim is now your claim, regardless of whether they didn't wear the safety goggles. Unfortunately, it is your responsibility to make sure that they do so. And our oldest claim right now is from 1943. The individual is a paraplegic, was injured in a farm accident, and we continue to pay that individual's medical bills, and we additionally send them a check every week for their missed wages. And so workers' compensation can get very expensive if you don't have the insurance, and that's something we're going to talk about a little bit later. Any questions that have popped up?
Not yet. I'll definitely let you know if they do.
Okay, thank you. So who is required to be covered? If you have one or more employees, you are mandated to have workers' compensation coverage. And I love my small businesses because I know you guys like to consider a lot of employees independent contractors. You give them 1099s and you believe they're not employees. Unfortunately, the law is still very gray about what an employee is and isn't. So if you tell the individual when to come to work, you tell them when to go home, you provide the materials, the equipment, the training for workers' compensation purposes, that is probably an employee. The ramifications of not covering an employee is if they are to be injured and we deem them to be an employee, we will cover their claim. However, we will bill you dollar for dollar for everything that is paid out in the lifetime of their claim. So that's something that I get a lot of questions about, in which individuals sometimes will have these contracts in which they say, I'm not an employee and I won't file workers' compensation. That agreement isn't worth the paper that it's written on. The law, unfortunately, is the law. And I tell people all the time, I would love to draft an agreement that says I can drive 90 miles an hour on 71. There is no agreement that can supersede the law. So if you are an employee, you can't waive your workers' compensation rights as an employee. And so those things are really important to look at and be mindful of, because ultimately you as an employer could face paying up their $50,000 bill.
Melanie, we have a question that came into the question box. This individual would like to know, what if they are the only employee at this time?
I'm going to get to that. That's a really good question.
Okay.
So questions about employees and classifications of employees.
There's none in the box right now, other than that one. Thanks.
Okay, well, let's move on. So why comply? And the main reason to comply is because it is in the law. This slide sort of talks about it a little bit, but you don't want to be the business in which BWC's Special Investigations Unit comes out. We see a lot of small businesses that were open or just opening, and one of the first things they do as their jobs, as they should do, is to see if you have workers' compensation coverage. And if you don't have coverage, then you're going to have to pay back premiums and pay penalties. And the other thing that it does to other businesses, they now have increased premiums because other businesses have not paid their fair share. So it's just important to make sure that you're complying with the law and what you need to do. And I'll talk a little bit about premiums. It's not something that should be scary to anybody. We are pretty flexible as an agency and pretty fair to employers. So the question that was just asked, this is going to get to that, who may want to consider getting coverage. So if you are a sole proprietor or a partner, if you don't have employees, you are not mandated to have workers' compensation coverage by law. However, if you are doing anything that is hazardous in the state of Ohio while you're working, you may want to consider getting workers' compensation coverage. So I don't ever advocate or tell anybody or give advice as to whether they should have it, but I just try and outline what the law and the statute states. So for a lot of my consultants who just sit behind a laptop all day, they may not need to have workers' compensation coverage. However, most small businesses will say if someone calls in and they have to fill in, they go and do the hazardous work. So maybe you own and you have a couple employees who do painting or do construction. But if someone can't come in, you come in to fill in the work, you may need to get workers' compensation coverage for yourself because you now have a hazard. Because as I said earlier, work and hurt, those things must come through our agency. And if you don't have workers' compensation coverage, that $50,000 bill of medical expenses is now your bill, and no one is permitted by law to cover it. And so we pay for the compensation, the medical, and I'm not here to advocate anyone getting workers' compensation insurance. My job is just to make sure that you are educated about what our agency does and what you need to do. And then any questions you have for me at the end of this presentation, I will provide my direct contact information. I know a lot of people are afraid of government agencies, and so you may not want to say what your name is. So I tell people they can say they're John Doe or Jane Smith, and I will assist them in getting coverage if they need that. Okay, so let's talk about workers' compensation premiums. One of the first things I want you to know is in my over 20 years of workers' compensation experience, I've yet to encounter any employer who can't go into business because of workers' compensation expenses. We are relatively inexpensive in the country. There are programs, I'm going to talk to you about the Grow Ohio program that will give you up to a 53% discount. So I often tell individuals, unless you're manufacturing dynamite, you can afford workers' compensation. Our premiums are solely based on your exposure, which is your payroll, and the hazard of what you do. So for individuals like myself who are considered clerical, we're relatively inexpensive employees to cover because we don't get a lot of claims coming into our office for clerical employees. However, if you're doing something much more hazardous, you will find that the premiums do increase. And I like to equate it to car insurance, which most people can understand. So if I drove a Toyota Corolla, my premiums for my car insurance are going to be relatively inexpensive. However, if I'm a 21-year-old who has a Ferrari, the premium is going to be much more expensive. And workers' compensation premiums operate in the same manner. questions about that?
No questions right now. You're doing a great job.
Okay. So Grow Ohio program options, and this is something that Governor Kasich started, in which he wanted to incentivize businesses to continue to stay in Ohio. We did have a period in which our premium fluctuated quite frequently, and this was an incentive to keep businesses in Ohio. So if you are a new business and you do not have workers' compensation coverage, you are eligible to receive a 53% discount for the first 2 years that you are in business and have a policy with us. Employers have to apply 30 days from the date that the BWC assigns their policy. So what I typically tell individuals as I'm doing my presentation is, once you apply for your policy, please contact me and let me know that. Then I will go into my calendar and set a reminder so that I can make sure I bug you about the 30 days that is upcoming, so you can get your 53% discount. You must apply for a group rating discount with a third-party administrator, and that becomes something that's I need to assist you with additionally, and it does require a fee to do that, but that's the first option, and most employers choose that option. However, if you do not want to go through a third-party administrator, you can get an automatic 25% discount, which we apply to your premiums. The requirements for that is you have to complete a safety survey, which may take all of 5 minutes. And then throughout the year, you must attend at least 2 hours of safety training. And then there is a safety management self-assessment that must be done at the end of the year. As long as you stay compliant with the BWC, you will continue to receive those discounts. So that's a 2-year discount that you will receive. For employers who go claims free, without a claim for those 2 years, you can continue into a 2-year discount with a third-party administrator, which is called group rating. So those premiums can be very inexpensive for new businesses that are starting up. Questions about that?
Not at this time.
I want to go back just a little bit. So premium options, you can pay monthly, bi-monthly, quarterly, semi-annually, or annually. So there are a lot of premium options for individuals. And at the end of the program, the presentation, I'm going to talk to you guys about some of the things that we're trying to do to assist businesses as we go through this COVID-19 pandemic. Okay, so everybody's here to talk about the drug-free safety program. One of the things that everybody needs to understand is Ohio law indicates all companies that you must have a drug-free workplace program. And that's regardless of how many employees you have. So anybody who applies to do work for the state of Ohio must have some type of drug-free workplace program. We're going to talk a little bit. I won't get into full details about these things, but we're going to talk a little bit about it. Obviously, some of the requirements are you have safety processes, a written drug-free safety program policy, employee education, supervisor training, alcohol and other drug testing. The testing is required and there must be an explanation, employee assistance, drug-free safety program, and self-implementation. So let's talk about the different levels of the drug-free safety program. So there are 3 different levels. There is a basic level, and this basic level requires for you to do all these things on a yearly basis. For basic level, you receive a 4% premium rebate. You must do pre-employment testing, post-accident testing, and then we'll talk about some of the education that must also accommodate the basic level. But those are the main things that incorporate the basic level of testing. Advanced level, this is once again something you must do on a yearly basis. And for this, you receive a 7% premium rebate. So you have to do the same pre-employment testing, post-accident testing. However, you then have to do random testing. In addition to that, you must provide assistance to the employees who test positive. And then what most construction employers are concerned with is the comparable level. You only have to do that once. You do not have to do that on a yearly basis. However, it is still subject to random testing. Questions about that?
Not currently. And
Okay.
as a reminder, I can run those poll questions whenever you'd like me to.
Yeah, I think we should do one poll question right now.
Great. I will go ahead and put the first one up. So it says, do you have a drug-free safety program? And you have two options, yes or no. We don't record how you vote, so don't worry about, selecting one answer or the other. And if you're having issues with voting on your screen, it's probably because you're in full screen mode and you just need to hit the escape key in order to make it so you can register your vote. And they are voting fast and furious. We usually like to get up over 80%. We're almost there. So you've got a very attentive group on here, Melony.
Good.
All right, we're up over 80% now, so I'm gonna close that poll down and share the results. We have 84% that said yes and 16% that said no. So I'll hide those results so they can see your screen again. There you go.
Okay. Thank you. So anybody who doesn't currently have a drug-free safety program, feel free. My contact information is going to be provided at the end of this webinar, and feel free to contact me and I can get you in contact. We have amazing safety specialists who will be more than happy to assist you in getting that program up and running for you. So one of the things that is required with the drug-free safety program is employee and supervisor training. When we're talking about the comparable training, because for construction employers, you're not required to do a lot of things that other employers have to do. However, you do have to do the employee testing and training. And so there is a 1-hour training for your employees. So everybody has to go through the 1-hour training. And then supervisors also have to go through the 1-hour training. However, they have to have an additional 1-hour skill building training in order to bid on any state agency jobs.
Melony, we have a couple questions that came into the question box.
Great.
The first one is, we have been told we have to complete the comparable level each year. Why? And the second question is related to that. It says, can you explain the comparable program requirement again? They said they've been paying a third-party administrator since they started their program. Oh, I'm sorry, that was a separate question. So those first two questions were about the comparable level. We'll start with those.
So the main difference between the comparable, you don't receive the discount unless you comply with all of the testing. For comparable, you only have to go through the training once. You don't have to do it annually. So if any individual is having an issue with not getting certified as a drug-free safety program workplace, they may not have checked the correct box when they applied on the application. you have to be specific that you are only doing this to be under the comparable application. If you do not choose that box, then the expectation is that you will do this on an annual basis. And that's something I can help and assist with, and we can get that corrected. What was the other question, Victoria?
We have a few more now. The next one is, I have been paying a third-party administrator since we started our program. What do they do for a small company like mine? And they said they have less than 10 employees.
That's a good question. So I won't get too technical, as that's where I started my career with. A third-party administrator is basically, in essence, if you have an employee who gets injured, they will hire an attorney to represent them. A third-party administrator represents the employer. And so instead of you hire an attorney every time you have a claim or you have a dispute or an issue with our agency, instead of you paying them billable hours, third-party administrators, you pay them once a year generally, and then they represent you. If you are in a group rating program and getting a discount, you must pay a third-party administrator to be in that discount program with us. And so they are, if you are getting a discount, you do have to pay them some type of fee in order to participate in our programs. And with the fee that you pay to them, what you receive in return is, in most cases, they will, any claim that comes into your business, any one of your employees who has a claim, they will represent you. And if they feel the need to fight the claim and you believe they need to fight the claim, they will do that for you. They will attend hearings for you at the Industrial Commission and trying to fight the claim. They are basically your workers' compensation advocate. Does that answer your question? I just want to make sure.
You know, if it doesn't, they can always put a comment back in the comment question box or raise their hand. I have a person with their hand raised. I'm going to unmute right now, Jonathan White. So if you could go ahead with your question.
Oh, I am sorry. I didn't actually have a question. I accidentally hit the yeah.
That's
Let
fine.
me lower. I did. The question I had was earlier. It was much earlier, and I just, because I've been taking notes, and I'm one of those people who's working on getting correct information so that the BWC program works properly for our small company. So thank you for allowing me to be here.
That's fine. We're happy to have you.
Did you have a question?
It was earlier. Listen, I done went past it, and but I think it had something to do with having to have your BWC and your employees. And if you have a person working for you that is not an employee, but he's a 1099, do you also have to cover him under your BWC, or is that his responsibility for the work that he's doing as a sub?
So that's a great question. That's one of the main questions I receive when I do my presentations. So a lot of small businesses believe that just giving a 1099 means that that person is not their employee. The main questions you need to ask yourself is, do I direct them? Do I have control over them? So do I tell the person when to come to work? Do I tell them when to go home? Do I provide the materials, the equipment, the training? If the answer is yes to those questions, typically that's an employee. And I know what the economy and the environment we're in right now, having flexibility sometimes confuses employers because they think, well, I don't really tell them everything to do all day. Nobody tells me when to log on during the day. And if I choose to log on at 10, I have that flexibility. And I think small businesses think because they give flexibility to their employees that they're not employees, and that may not necessarily be the case. So just be
Okay.
conscious of that. And if you have questions about whether somebody is or isn't, feel free to email me or give me a call, because I know a lot of people are afraid that I'm compliance. I'm not. I'm just here to educate you guys and try and be as helpful as I can for small businesses.
Great.
But yeah, it's just the last thing you want as a small business is not to cover somebody, because the calls that I get into me are calls from individuals who most of you didn't know that if you get hurt while you're working in Ohio, that it won't be paid for by anybody else. It can't be paid for by anybody else by law. And so the calls I get is because this individual had either a handshake agreement or some type of written agreement with the owner that they wouldn't file workers' compensation. And once they get hurt and try and file it under their private health insurance, they realize they can't do that. And so this $50,000 bill is now their bill. And generally what they do is get in contact with an attorney, and the attorney will ask about, what was this relationship that you had with this individual? It sounds like you might have been an employee, and they file the claim with us. And then a determination is made as to whether that individual was an employee. And if ultimately we find that they were an employee, we then send you that bill.
So it seems like you might as well just make them a part of your employment package with the BWC, because you have the coverage anyway, correct?
Well, I'm not saying that you should just automatically have workers' compensation for everybody that you do business for. I think you should try and determine whether they're an employer or not. And those are
Okay.
questions. Those are questions you can ask me. There are subcontractors, there are independent contractors that you are not responsible for paying. If they get hurt, they're not your employee. If I have someone come to my home and paint, they're not my employee.
Correct.
So if they get hurt while they're working, I wouldn't be responsible for paying their workers' compensation claim. But if I have a housekeeper who's always around and that's what she does, she is probably my employee. And so if she got hurt, I may be responsible for paying for any injury that she incurs.
Excellent. Thank you. I appreciate the help.
You're welcome.
Great. I'm going to go ahead and mute you back then, Jonathan. If you have any more questions, you can raise your hand again. And Melanie, we have a number of questions still in the question panel. Would you like me to continue to read those, or did you want to keep going with your? Okay, I'll keep going with the questions. The next one is, what are you calling skill building training?
So skill building training, that is just what is used within our website and in our materials that we provide when it comes to drug-free safety program. But it is basically just additional training about how to assist individuals, how to assist your employees. It's just a term that's used, but basically it's just additional drug-free safety program training.
Great. The next question is also about training. Are you able to take online training? If so,
Yes.
where is it available to be accepted by BWC of Ohio?
Yes, you can do online training, and I can provide that to you, Victoria, so you can provide it to the other attendees. But yes, you can do it online for sure. And especially during this COVID-19, we're doing everything online. So you're definitely able to do that online, and I can provide the link to you.
Great. Next question. This individual says they still don't understand what is being said about the comparable level. They understand the basic and the advanced program and their requirements. When does the comparable level apply?
So the comparable level you don't have to do it every single year. You do it once you register and apply, and then you do not have to do it again every year. The other levels, the basic and the advanced, you must do those trainings every single year.
All right, last question for right now. It says, we are a county office and hire contractors to work our construction projects. We require verification of enrollment in the drug-free workplace program for the prime and all subs. Do trucking companies have to be enrolled in the drug-free program? What about brokers?
I am not sure about brokers. And I'll check in on this. I would imagine that anybody who gets any kind of state project is required to have that, regardless of whether they're brokers. But I will check in on that. But I assume anybody who's doing business with the state of Ohio has to have at least the comparable drug-free safety program.
These have been great questions. We do have one more that's come in. It says, how will we handle our drug-free safety program training this year? We were scheduled for May, but were canceled due to COVID. Will there be an extension for when the training for this year must be completed?
Yes, we have extended the deadlines for those programs, and we're offering more online trainings, obviously because of the COVID. So our agency has been very amenable to businesses, understanding that a lot of the things that we used to do in person we're not able to do. So yes, it has been extended, and we do offer a lot of online training, and that's what we're doing, all of our trainings online at this point. And
Great.
so that's something I'll speak to Victoria and have her send out to everybody, so you can get to the link to find out the trainings that are available to you.
We'll definitely send out an email after the webinar has completed. It'll probably go out tomorrow morning, but we'll include all the information that Melony is mentioning that she's going to provide. Melony, I have Colleen who has raised her hand, so I'm going to go ahead and unmute her so she can ask her question. Colleen, go ahead.
Okay, can you hear me?
Hi, Colleen.
Hi. I'm sorry you mentioned how often the comparable program needs to be done, but I have never heard of the comparable program or level. So I don't really know anything what it is my question. What is the comparable level?
So the comparable is specifically for construction employers. And so what it doesn't require them to do is the yearly education and training.
Okay, so you do randoms. You do randoms and you do pre-employment, but you don't have to do the training.
It's not that you have to do the random. It is just you're subjected to possibly having the state randomly test individuals.
Okay.
So at any point, someone from the state could attend or show up at one of your construction sites and randomly test someone. So you have to be available to do that.
Okay, and so therefore, you get into the program and you do the education the first time, and then you don't have to do any other testing otherwise, but you do have to know that the state may randomly select if they arrive and test people.
Correct.
And do you still get the rebate?
No, you do not. If you do not do any of the other steps, if you do not do pre-employment, post-accident, you do not get the rebates. You would have to comply with doing, So you would be in compliance with getting a state bid or job. However, you would not be entitled to the rebates if you don't do the other steps.
I understand. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Great. I'm going to go ahead and mute you back now, Colleen. And Melanie, are you prepared for some more questions, or did you want to keep going with your presentation?
We can go with more questions.
Okay, just have one more at the moment. It says, as a material supplier or broker, I've never had to show a DFSP cert, but a workers' comp, yes. So my question would be, is workers' comp and DFSP two different things?
They are two different things. So Bureau Workers' Compensation is just having coverage for your employer, for your employees if they are injured. The drug-free safety program is an option for most employers. And I think that's where it sometimes gets confusing for construction employers. Workers' compensation, you're mandated to have that to cover your employees if they get injured. If you have one or more employees, as we talked about earlier, you must have workers' compensation coverage. The drug-free safety program is not mandated for most employers. The only employers who need to have the drug-free safety program are employers who want to do business with the state of Ohio. We mandate and regulate that you must have that program in order to bid on a job with us. So it is not something that you have to do if you're not choosing to bid on jobs with the state of Ohio.
Okay, and there's no other questions at this time in the question box, and no one else currently has their hand raised. So I think
Okay,
we're
well,
good
let's
to
go to
continue.
the poll question.
Sure. I'll go ahead and launch that. I think this was your fun poll question. It says, what sport are you missing the most? And you put down football, baseball, and basketball, so we'll let folks respond. I was very tempted to add soccer to it, but I didn't.
I thought about it.
Didn't want to disrupt what my presenters had provided. So, and again, if you're having an issue voting, just hit the escape button to take your screen out of full screen mode, and it'll select your, be able to put your vote in there. And they're voting quickly, so they are obviously still paying attention. That's good. All right, we are up over 80%, so I'm going to close that out and share the results. Believe it or not, 46% said football is what they're missing the most, followed by 24% baseball. That would be my choice if I was voting. And then 30% is basketball. I want to hide those results, and it's all yours again.
I was going to say I'm definitely missing OSU football, but we will see. I just thought it was something fun because I know we're all missing a lot of things in our life, and I'm a big sports fan, and not being able to watch sports or see them in person. I love being outside, so any sport that I can be outside and see, I love. So I'm glad to see most people are like me, and it's football. Thank you very much. Okay, so let's talk about some of the BWC COVID-19 updates, just what we're trying to do as an agency. We've done premium deferments, and I think they're great in the sense that we've allowed businesses who can't afford to pay their premiums to stay in business without them lapsing them, because obviously a lapse in coverage means if you have an injury while you're lapsing coverage, that injury becomes yours. However, what I've been trying to remind businesses is it is just a deferment. So it doesn't mean it's forgiven. So we started deferring premiums for March, April, May, and then right around May, we then continued and did them for June, July, and August. So as it stands right now, no employer has to pay us premiums until September. So I'm not sure if that will continue. That's something you guys can reach out to me and let me know, but please be mindful of the fact that those premiums will be eventually due. One of the good things that we do as an agency is any business that is having a problem paying their premiums, we offer up premium installment plans. And so even for our businesses who are paying on a monthly basis, if they need to break it down in half of what they typically pay, we will assist them with that. So just contact me. I tell people, don't call the 800 number. Not that those individuals are not very helpful, but I generally can assist you and get you to the correct departments that you need to make sure that anything you're going through as a business, you don't feel like you have to get bounced around, because I know all of you are dealing with so much right now because of the pandemic. And so just reach out to me, email me, give me a call, and I can assist you with any deferments you may need. We did issue premium rebate checks, and all of you who had a BWC policy, you should have received those by now. Anybody who hasn't needs to reach out to me and I can find out what happened with your check, but we sent those out April, May. We've done this 5 of the last 6 years. And basically, we're unlike most state agencies in the sense that we're not covered by taxpayer dollars. It's based on what we receive from employers in premiums. Anytime we receive a certain amount of excess, we must give those checks back to businesses, or fees, I should say, in the form of either programs or grants or checks. And what we've been hearing 5 of the last 6 years from businesses is they would prefer to receive those in checks. And this last year, employers received about 85% in a rebate check of what they paid to us the previous year in premiums. So we're very business focused, and we understand what all of you are going through right now, and anything that we can do, we've been trying to do. Questions about the deferments or the rebate checks?
There's a couple of people who said that they did not receive it or don't recall receiving it. So as you said, they can just reach out to you directly, correct?
Please do, yes.
Okay.
As long as they had a BWC policy and the BWC policy was active. So as long as you paid premiums to us and your policy was active, meaning you weren't lapsed in coverage, you would receive that payment. But anybody who believes they were in that status and they still didn't receive it, please do contact me directly and I will research that for you.
And there's a question in here, want to know about the free mass.
Yeah, I'm going to get to that now. So we have a distribution of face coverings that we started, I'm thinking it was maybe 6 weeks ago, in which we decided, because part of our agency, a major part of our agency, is about safety. And so how can we help businesses as they were reopening be safe? And of course, face coverings is something that we all know we need in order to make sure we're protecting ourselves and protecting each other. And so we started to provide a bundle of 50 face coverings to businesses. And so every business will receive at least 50. And we started with the small businesses, which I was really glad about, because I know a lot of times we give attention to larger employers and businesses. But we started from smallest to largest, and everybody will receive bundles of 50 depending on their employee size. And what we're focusing on and trying to do is make sure we provide at least 5 per employee. And those have started going out. We initially started doing those through our warehouse and distribution. Us exempt employees were asked to go out and assist with the distribution and packaging and shipping those out. And it was too much for the few of us who were exempt to handle. And so we now have DHL who is sending out those bundles and packaging those and handling the distribution of the face coverings. But those are steadily going out. Anybody who has questions about where their package is in the process, we have a spreadsheet in which we can look at those and find out when yours is going to go out, if it's gone out. I just welcome everybody to make sure if you're still working from home, go to your business location, because I had a couple of people who contacted me and said they didn't get the mask, but they hadn't been to their business in a few weeks. But we are aggressively trying to get those out to all businesses, understanding that everybody's trying to get up and running. Questions about the face covering?
Yes, there's someone who said that they are running low and they wanted to know if they could get any more.
So unfortunately, we only give out the first distribution just because we're trying to get them to everybody. What we have been telling other businesses, because we've gotten people who will contact us and say, I don't need all of these, it's just me and one other person. We've asked them to donate those to other businesses who may need more. So unfortunately, right now, we're not giving more out, but that's something we're always looking at to try and do as much as we can. But maybe just reach out to another small business who may not be needing it, may not be up and running yet, because I have a couple of friends who own small businesses and they haven't reopened yet. And so they donated theirs to churches. So maybe just reach out to some other small businesses in your area to see if they're willing to give you the packages that we sent out to them. But I'm sorry, no, we're not sending out additional masks at this point in time.
There's another question that came in concerning the drug-free safety program. It says their
Okay.
DFSP annual report is required every year at the comparable level. They still don't understand why, since they said you're saying that we do not have to submit any information. They said they're required to do employee training, supervisor training, pre-employment testing, post-accident testing. Please explain or let them know if they should contact yourself or someone else directly. Thank you.
Okay, so for the comparable level, and I think this is what gets missed a lot, is when you apply, if you do not select that level, then you're going to receive notifications that you have to do all of these things on an annual basis. And so I think that's where it gets missed in the application process, is if you apply for the drug-free safety program and you did not say you want it comparable, then the expectation is that you have to do all those things. And so, yes, please contact me and I can assist you in assuring that you are classified as the comparable level.
Great. And I have one person, Andrea Russell, who had raised her hand in the GoToWebinar panel, but unfortunately she has not entered her audio pin yet, and I can't unmute her until the audio pin is entered. So I clicked the link to send it to her again. If she would enter that, then I'll be able to unmute her in a few minutes. There's no other questions at this time.
Okay. So I just wanted to make sure that everyone on the call, I know these are really hard times for all of us, and especially for small businesses. And I always provide my direct contact information for everybody. So that is my direct business cell that I have home with me. That is my direct email. Feel free, and I tell people this all the time, when you think about workers' compensation, don't try and dig around for the 800 number or try and navigate through the website as to what you should do. Feel free to contact me directly. If I can't answer your question, I will find someone who can answer your question. We're here to assist you. We understand everything you're going through right now, and whatever we can do to assist, we're trying to do as an agency, and just use me as a resource.
We do have another question that's come into the question box. They would like to know where the list is of those who have received the face coverings so they could check and see if theirs have been sent out yet.
Unfortunately, that is not something that we have out there. They would have to contact me for me to check that list and get back with them.
And you've provided them your contact information, so that's good. Do you want to run the last poll question? Will we wait and see if there's any
Yeah,
additional questions? Okay.
definitely.
I'll launch that. Last poll question, does a positive test always result in disallowance of a workers' compensation claim? So just go with your gut response, yes or no. We're not going to record how you answered. And I still see that the person who had raised their hand, Andrea Russell, has not activated their audio yet. So Andrea, if you'd like to put your question in the question box, I'll be happy to read that off to Melony. Oh, and we have a question from Jonathan White. So we'll put him up next. He did raise his hand, so I'll unmute him when we finish with the poll.
Okay.
All right, we're up over 80%, so I'm going to close that out and share the results. 14% said yes, and 86% said no. So I'll hide that, Melony, and let you comment on that.
So currently, if you have a drug-free workplace or safety program, just because an individual tests positive and has a workers' compensation claim, that does not necessarily mean that their claim is going to be denied. You basically have to prove that their level was at a point in which that is what caused the claim. So for instance, you could have someone who has an injury and you send them to the urgent care or the emergency room and they test positive for marijuana. Unless the levels were at a point in which that person was incapacitated and found to be incapacitated, it is possible that their claim could still be allowed. And that's something I think a lot of people don't understand, that just testing positive for drugs does not mean your claim is going to be disallowed.
Thank you for explaining that. These have been excellent questions, and I'm going to unmute Jonathan White now so he can ask his. Jonathan, Go ahead.
Yeah, my question was, doing the deferment, premium deferment, if a situation arises and someone becomes injured, are they still covered through the workman comp even though the premium's been deferred?
Yes, they are still covered. So the deferment basically says that we are not going to lapse your coverage because you did not pay your premiums. So
But we will be responsible at some point.
For the premiums, but not for the claim.
Right.
So anything
Okay.
that occurs during the deferment is still considered covered by our agency. It just means your premiums, you have to pay those later. So if you have any claims that are occurring right now, we still totally cover those claims. However, eventually your premiums, regardless, are still going to be due at some point in time, and we can work with you on getting a premium payment together. But yeah, we will still cover all of those claims.
Oh, I had one other question with that.
Yes, sir.
Do you guys provide the safety like job boxes, safety information that can be discussed with your employees through a daily or weekly basis, where they get safety information, like, frayed cords or things that you shouldn't work with?
Yes, we do. And I'm glad you mentioned that. We have a safety specialist, and your premiums cover all of their services. I always tell all of my businesses that they are basically your eyes before OSHA. And so they will ensure and do a walkthrough. They will do trainings, all free of charge for your business. And anything that you need, you can contact. All of you are assigned a safety specialist, and they do that free of charge for you.
Oh, yeah.
You can contact them, anything that you need. They will do a walkthrough through your business, tell you what OSHA would have an issue with if they were to come out. They will do trainings.
Okay. Okay.
Great. Is that your questions then, Jonathan?
Yeah. Yes.
All right.
Thank you.
I'm going to go ahead and mute you back then. Thank you. And I don't see any other hands raised at this time. Actually, we have Andrea Russell now on the audio. So I'm going to go ahead and unmute you, Andrea, and you can ask your question of Melony.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can.
Yes.
Oh, we've had a kind of a hard time trying to get the audio switched on here, but that I figured it out. I just wanted to say that I had some similar questions about the comparable. With the COVID-19 relaxed requirements for sole proprietors, it seems the answer to your question was BWC still does not cover sole proprietors. Is that correct? The coverage is not applicable for sole proprietors, only for the employees if you do employ others.
Are you specifically talking about the drug-free safety program or workers' compensation coverage?
Workers' compensation, because I know that was relaxed for the PPP, that sole proprietors were allowed to apply for that, even though in the past they weren't. But with the BWC coverage, we've always, as sole proprietors, been denied that coverage for ourselves. And so my understanding is that that's still the case. That restriction has not been relaxed. Is that correct?
So I don't know of any restriction on sole proprietors applying for coverage. We don't deny anybody.
For the benefits, we can't take advantage of the benefits. Only if we employ someone else, then they can take advantage of the benefits. Okay.
No.
And
so that's incorrect. If I, as an individual person, if I wanted to open up workers' compensation coverage for myself, I could do that. And if I were, as long as I paid my premiums, I would be covered. So I'm not sure what you're receiving or hearing, but anybody who pays workers' compensation premiums to us to cover themselves, they are covered.
So I have a comparable policy, and I've completed all of the training and have my certificate. So the benefits that go along, like injury on the workplace, that does apply to me or does not?
Okay, so I think I see where the disconnect is. So just having, when you apply for workers' compensation coverage, and that's the initial policy that you have to apply for, you have the option of opening up a policy for your employees. On the application, it asks if you want to also cover yourself. If you do not select covering yourself, then the policy only covers your employees. However, if you want to cover yourself, you just have to select that you additionally want to cover yourself. So a lot of employers apply for coverage with us and they don't select covering themselves. And if you don't select that, you are not covered if you don't select it.
Can we amend our policy to cover ourselves? How do we go about doing that?
You can amend it anytime you want to amend it. You could do it today, whenever you want. We allow you to amend the policy to say, yes, I want to cover myself. Yes.
Okay. And then as we add employees, we have to log back in to include them as soon as we hire them. What's the process?
What I would say to you is, if you're going to double in the amount of employees that you have, you should probably contact me or log in and increase your exposure, which is your payroll. But if you're just adding a person here and there every now and again, it's probably not necessary. But yeah, I always tell people, because if you report that your payroll is $50,000 a year, and a year later it's $400,000 and someone gets injured, we may wonder if you've been paying the appropriate premiums to cover all of those people, so that could come into question. But if it's just a few people here and there, update it when you feel like you get around to it, or just email me and say, hey, I just hired this person, and I can go in and update it for you. It's not a big deal. But it's only when you have drastic changes in your payroll or your exposure that becomes an issue. But you guys can always email me or call, and I can help you with that.
Oh, help us with that. Okay, because I just did the payroll reporting and completed that, and because my payroll wasn't that significant, I didn't have like a large bill to pay. I had already paid my tune-up, so the tune-up pretty much covered that payroll that was owed. But I think the tune-up, am I correct? The tune-up is just once a year. Is that how I think I do that? Okay.
It's once a year. And just for everybody who's still on the call, what she's referring to is called our true-up. And so basically, when you apply for coverage, we ask you to estimate your payroll and tell us what you do, and then we apply a premium cost to you. At the end of the year, we ask you what your actual payroll was, and if you overestimate it, we give you premiums back. If you underestimate it, you owe us additional premiums, and you have to do that every year. So it's basically just reconciling to make sure what you paid to us is what you should have paid to us. And sometimes people, I tell small businesses this all the time, don't overestimate your payroll when you apply for coverage, because your premium is going to be higher than they should be, and we'll give the money back to you when you actually reconcile with us. But I'm sure most of you would prefer to keep it in your pockets instead of paying it to us and getting it back in a refund later.
And I have one more question, if I may.
Of course.
It pertains to the Bureau of Workers' Compensation on my business liability insurance policy, not the Bureau of Workers' Compensation, but my business insurance with my private insurance. That has a box that says Bureau of Workers' Compensation, and I had my agent check that I do have Bureau of Workers' Compensation premium, and he added my policy number. Is there a specific amount that he should put in there for coverage, or leave it blank?
Well, and that's one of the things that's hard. I get these questions quite a bit from businesses, because a lot of insurance agencies, businesses, because we're only one of 4 monopolistic states in the country, that is something they need to know. So they want to know, is your policy a $500,000 policy? Is it a $1 million policy? And so we have a letter that we provide, just explaining that we're monopolistic. So he can't put anything in there because it is limitless. If you pay us $200 a year and you have a $10 million claim, as long as you paid your premiums, that $10 million claim is covered. But that's because we're monopolistic. You just pay your premium to us and we cover everything. In other states, in all the other states, there is a limit to how much they will cover, and that's not the case with Ohio. So if you need that letter, he doesn't have to provide anything, but if he gets pushback, because sometimes we do get pushback from people who are not familiar with Ohio, I can provide that letter for you.
Okay, well, he must have known, because he didn't put anything there. He just put that I have the coverage and put my policy number.
Okay, sounds good. Let me know if you need anything else, though.
I will. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
You should probably mute me now.
Yes, I'll take care of that. Thanks, Andrea. All right, Melanie, we've got another question for you in the question box. It says, in going backwards to when the 3 different levels, basic, comparable, and advanced, were discussed, was it said that if your company was at the advanced level, the employer is responsible to get the employee help if they tested positive for drugs or alcohol?
Correct. So if you're in the advanced level, you must, but within your policy, in order to get the 7% discount in the advanced level, you must provide employee assistance. So you can't have an employee test positive. You're allowed, of course, to terminate them, but you must provide them with assistance before terminating them. So you can't just fire them for their first offense.
Okay, I think that's all the questions we had in the question box, and I don't see any other raised hands. So I do want to acknowledge that one of the employers, oh, we do have another raised hand, but I'm going to acknowledge that one of the employers who was on the webinar has offered that they have a number of free masks available, and that I'm going to send their follow-up information out on the email as well. If someone would like to contact them, they're happy to share. So
That's great.
good. We have time for one more question here. That's all right, Melony?
Yes, for sure.
Okay. I'm going to unmute Michael Barkley. Michael,
Hi, Michael.
Self-muted, so you're going to need to unmute yourself on your end. Hopefully he figures that out pretty quickly. I've unmuted you on my end, but there's a mute button somewhere on your end that you'll need to find. You know, if not, you can always
put it in the chat box, Michael.
Yeah, he put a message in that he had typed the question, and I believe that it had already been answered, but he wanted to confirm that as the owner of the company, so long as he had workers' comp insurance and he was injured, then he would be able to file a claim. Is that correct?
Yeah, and I'm glad he asked that question again, because it is something that when employers apply for workers' compensation coverage, the application is initially meant to cover your employees. And so there is a question that's later down in the application that asks about whether you want to cover yourself. If you do not check that box, you are not covered. And so I get a lot of employers who they may have injuries and they say, I have workers' comp coverage, but they didn't choose to elect coverage for themselves because the law doesn't mandate them to cover themselves. That's why there's an extra section within the application asking them whether they want to cover themselves, because they do not have to, by law, cover themselves. So just having a workers' compensation policy, in general, the policy is to cover your employees unless you additionally ask to cover yourself.
And he responded, okay, thank you so much. Wow, I never knew that.
And he can contact me directly and I can add him on at any time.
Great. Well, it looks like that's it for questions, both in the question box and through the raised hand feature. So, Melony, I want to thank you very much. Is there anything else that you or Lisa would like to add at this time?
No, I just want to let everybody know, please use me as a resource. Just feel free to contact me. I know we're all going through troubling times right now, and workers' comp is probably not something that's at the forefront of your mind with everything else you have going on. But when you think of the BWC, just say, I need to call Melony, and just contact me and I'll definitely assist any of you. So good luck to everybody out there.
Okay. And this is Lisa. I failed to identify myself as a regional outreach manager for ODOT. I am one of 3. I will forward the contact information for the other outreach managers to Victoria, and you can include that with all your other information also. And be on the lookout this week for information regarding our July 30th event, and that will be updates with OSHA. Thank you.
Thank you both, and thank you everyone who attended today's webinar. We'll be sending out a follow-up email. Please look for that sometime tomorrow morning, and I hope everybody has a great rest of your day, and please stay safe. Take care.
Bye-bye.